Okay, so we have our facility and team tables, and now we are going to set up the one-to-one relationship. So we have to do this in a 1-2 punch. First, we'll set up the relationship, which will actually result in a one-to-many, but then we're going to turn around and add a second constraint. This is done with constraints. We add a second constraint to make it a one-to-one. So let's focus on setting up the relationship, which is basically a foreign key constraint that we will add to the team table. We have to tell MySQL, hey, this facility ID is a foreign key that originates in the facility table. Okay, so we will, and this can be done in the original table definition. I could have just continued here and typed another constraint and gone along that way, but we're doing it after the fact. I already executed this statement in the previous video. We have the facility and team tables in existence. So this is actually going to show you how to alter a table definition after you create the table, which is valuable in itself. So we'll say alter table, and then we have to specify the name of the table that we're altering, and this is the team table. And we're going to add a constraint, and I'm watching my typing. Okay, so the constraint we will have to name. Why don't we call it team facil FK. That's just a name that I made up. It really is not terribly important. Unless maybe you want to remove the constraint, then you remove it by name later. But if you do it right and you set it up, you shouldn't have to touch the constraint again. So this is going to be a foreign key constraint. So we have to type foreign key, just like we type primary key when we're adding a primary key constraint. So now we have to, let's see, so this is foreign key, and then you have to specify the foreign key in this table, in the team table, and that would be the facility ID. So we say facility ID, I'm watching my typing, and then we have to say references, okay, references, and then we have to specify the table where the foreign key comes from, which is the facility table. Okay, so we have to say that this key references the facility table, and then you of course have to specify which column in the facility table, and that would be the facility ID. Okay, typically you may see something like this on update cascade. That means that if the original key changes, or if the primary key changes in the facility table, then that change would be perpetuated into the team table, into the related table. But since this is an auto increment anyway, those numbers aren't going to change. So that's kind of redundant, but I just threw it in there to show you how to do it. So let's see, we will add our semicolon. I will copy this. We will execute it at the command line. Okay, and whenever you get that query okay, that means that everything went fine. If there's an error in a statement, you'll know it. Well, here, let's see. Why don't I try to do that again? Okay, and here's an error. It's saying cannot create, basically, this is a problem because the constraint already exists and I'm trying to add it again. So here's an error message that you might see. Okay, not all that descriptive, but that's what it looks like when a query doesn't run. Okay, so what I have at this moment is a one-to-many relationship. I set up the foreign key constraint, and by default it's a one-to-many relationship, and we want this one to be a one-to-one. So I do have to add one more constraint to this table, the team table, and that is to make this column a unique constraint. Okay, so that's what we'll do next, because that's what enforces the one-to-one. So we'll say alter table, I probably could have cut and pasted. Okay, we're adding a new constraint, and once again I have to come up with a name. Why don't we call it unique facil ID? Okay, again, shouldn't really have to come into play once, as long as you create it carefully and everything is successful as far as adding your constraints. So I gave it a name, and now this is a unique constraint. Okay, and then basically all I have to do is specify the name of the column that I would like to be unique, which is facility ID. Okay, I'm copying it. Okay, and there is our unique constraint executed, and now we have in our Powder Puff database in MySQL this fully represented. In the next video, we'll do the coach entity.